Hello, and welcome to another episode of Focusing on You. I'm Heather King, Educational Director for Hope Abounds Cancer Network. We are so excited you decided to join us today to learn a little bit more about Lynch syndrome. I'm very excited to introduce you to an amazing woman that is going to share her journey with us, Miss Wenora Johnson. So thank you, Wenora, for being here today.
Well, thank you, Hope, for that a great introduction and for allowing me to even share my story as a Lynch syndrome patient and patient advocate.
Well, thank you. We at Hope Abounds Cancer Network really try hard to encourage patients to advocate for themselves. And genetic and genomic testing has been very important from an educational perspective for us for quite some time. And we've done quite a bit with a BRCA mutation or hereditary breast and ovarian cancer spectrum because a lot of people know about it. Everything's pink ribbon and people know about breast cancer and they talk about breast cancer. And there's a lot of information and knowledge out there around that. But we've also had multiple conversations here at Hope Abounds about how Lynch syndrome is just as prevalent as a BRCA mutation. And can you share with us just many of our listeners might not have heard some of those educational things in the past. What exactly is Lynch syndrome? And maybe you can also piggyback on that just a little bit about your journey and how you even found out about it, because obviously you probably didn't know about it in the beginning.
Absolutely did not. So I guess if I could back up just a little bit
Sure.
and kind of reintroduce myself. So
Sure.
my name is Wenora Johnson. For those of
Mhm.
you not who don't know me out there, I'm a three-time cancer survivor. I was diagnosed with stage 3B colorectal cancer in 2011, and following a genetic test, it identified me as being Lynch syndrome positive. I developed two additional cancers, endometrial and basal cell carcinoma. But I want people to also know that I am a mom, I'm a wife, I'm a grandmother, a Navy veteran, and as you will hear as we talk further along, a very passionate patient advocate. And for the past 10 years on this journey, I've been working closely with many organizations who promote changing policies and guidelines, educating patients about genetic testing, clinical trials, and cancer survivorship. And so, Heather, you asked me what is Lynch syndrome identified as? And I'm going to give you the CDC kind of version of how they say and explain what Lynch syndrome is. So, according to the CDC, Lynch syndrome is also known as hereditary non-polyposis colorectal cancer. And it's actually the most common cause of hereditary colorectal cancer. Now, according to another site, as many as one in every 279 individuals may be carriers or have a mutation in a gene associated with Lynch syndrome. Now, people with Lynch syndrome are more likely to get colorectal cancer and other cancers at the age probably younger than 50. And some of those cancers are uterine, endometrial, stomach, liver, kidney, brain, and then certain types of skin cancers. So, myself, I've been identified with an MSH2 mutation, and I was 45 years old when I was diagnosed with that late stage colorectal cancer. Now, if I could just add quickly to Heather, that if you've been identified with a cancer, ask your biological family members who have had cancer about genetic testing. And it's also important to work with a genetic counselor who can really help you understand the entire process. You know, your biological family history may give you clues that Lynch syndrome runs in your family. For me, it was my grandfather who passed away from metastatic colorectal cancer at the age of 38, and my mother, who passed away from a glioblastoma at the age of 42. And those were kind of the connected dots that my oncologist used to suspect that I was Lynch syndrome.
Mm. Well, I wanted to first say thank you for your service and thank you for that wonderful explanation. It's amazing, even with knowing that you had an MSH2 mutation, that was you found that out with your first cancer diagnosis, correct? So is that correct?
Yes, that's correct,
Yes.
Heather. Yeah.
And then after that, you had two more
Yeah.
cancers.
So if I could share with you quickly, this is a
Sure.
copy of my 12-page uh, genetic testing test that I kind of just keep with me. It's my reminder. And the
Mhm.
states in red there exactly what I have, which was positive, being positive for the MSH2 variant. And I say this document saved my life. And I say it saved my life because even though it was 4.5 years later, after my first initial cancer, before I had a genetic test, the genetic test, when I did have it, told me that I had a 60% chance of getting endometrial cancer. And
Mm.
so when I say it saved my life, it did, because that meant that I could do something about it. And so what I decided to do was have a complete hysterectomy. And upon the biopsy also being completed for this procedure, endometrial cancer was there already.
Mm. It's amazing. And thank you for sharing your report. We actually have received sponsorship here at Hope Abounds from Myriad Genetics, and they're our genetic testing lab of choice. So we talk all the time about accuracy associated with different genetic and genomic labs. And so it's wonderful that you also had it done at a lab that's very accurate and actionable. Um, it's isn't it amazing just knowing your family history? It's probably something that many oftentimes it's not discussed or it's not correlated because patients don't necessarily understand or think something that happened generations before, or even if it happens, and sorry for the loss of your mother as well, but it doesn't necessarily hit home. People think, okay, it's cancer. People get cancer. That's just what happens. So when you started piecing all that together with your oncologist, what was going through your mind and what were you thinking?
I guess for me, the first thing I was just thinking were it was kind of like a light bulb moment, like,
Mm-hmm.
aha, this is why, my grandfather who passed away from colorectal cancer, it may have seemed like to my mother and my aunt at the time that it was just a cancer. But
Mm-hmm.
when she herself passed away from a cancer, um, I guess I didn't even really think that it could be something tied together to my family. And, we do something that probably all of our family members do, is just not share health information, just as you mentioned, that I really wished that my mother at the time when she was alive would have shared with me that my grandfather passed away from colorectal cancer. Instead, it was my aunt who told me, but only after I woke up from surgery and being told that, oh, yeah, you have stage 3B colorectal cancer. And get this, you've had it for about 15 years. So if I'm
Mm.
if I'm thinking and counting back, I was 40, almost 45 at the time, that meant that at the age of 30, I really should have been getting, tested or doing
Mm-hmm.
surveillance of some kind or
Mm-hmm.
colonoscopies so that I wouldn't wake up to a future late stage cancer.
Right. And so knowing that information now and having that report, how does that change some of the health or potentially what family members would do within your family?
Well, to be honest, Heather, first thing that I wanted to do, because, as the matriarch of my little small knit family, is that I wanted to, in a way, shield them from this diagnosis
Mm-hmm.
of cancer, putting on the front of that I'm going to be okay, mom's okay. I've got this and I'm going to handle it my way. And, I realized that I was doing the same things that others before me and prior generations had done, just not shared this vital information that was not only just important for them, they have a 50% chance of having Lynch syndrome themselves. So
Right.
I was doing them an injustice by not sharing this information with them. And that, at the end of the day, surveillance and understanding Lynch syndrome
Mm-hmm.
is way better than waking up to a late stage cancer and not knowing where to begin or where to even start with this type of a journey.
Absolutely. And you use the example that your diagnosis for colon cancer was late stage and it was at the age of 45 and it was growing for probably 15 years. So if your mother may have been tested and that mutation would have been known, your colonoscopies could have started substantially younger. So it might have been caught before the polyp even turned cancerous or earlier stage compared to a later stage, like when you were diagnosed. So it definitely does make a big difference.
It does. And one of the things that I've learned, and it's only because of this the patient advocacy that I'm involved in as well, is the importance of self-advocacy, is because
Mm-hmm.
once you then want to, be proactive about it. I mean, for me, it will be a lifetime of surveillance, but I think of it as my new norm and I'm not afraid of it because it keeps me alive. And
Mm-hmm.
so changing the mindset to reflect that, I think is important with not just cancer, probably any disease.
Mm-hmm. No, I completely agree. And we say all the time at Hope Abounds that knowledge truly is power. So when we've been having conversations with some patients will say to me, Heather, I don't want to know. I don't want to know.
Yeah.
What would you say to a patient or a caregiver where they want to stick their head in the sand and they're like, I just don't want to know.
So, Heather, if I can be transparent and share a little bit of a story with you, I have two daughters,
Mhm.
and their ages are 40 and 32. So, definitely into adulthood. And yet, the oldest doesn't want to be tested. She doesn't want to know. And it
Mhm.
took me a couple of years of just not understanding, well, why don't you want to know? Why wouldn't you want to get tested? And I had to really step back, number one, as a mom, because maybe the message wouldn't come directly from me, that moment of the light bulb would come on for
Mhm.
her. And so what I'm determined to be now is the source of information and guidance they can come to if it comes to that point. And the youngest one, who's 32, she's almost there. She's ready to get tested, genetically tested, to have early colonoscopy, you name it. And I think that's the first thing we have to do, is just acknowledge that adults, whether they're children or family members that we love, that it is their decision at the end of the day.
Right.
And that we can just encourage them that this information really is more life saving than anything else. And that I'll still be there for you regardless of the outcome.
Absolutely. And something I have shared in numerous different educational programs we've done is knowing or not knowing doesn't change the fact whether every single cell in your body has a hit or a broken mutation. And obviously, within Lynch, you discussed numerous cancers. So we know of 10 right now. Who knows, as our technology and science continues to evolve, how many it will be later. But it really does impact screening and surveillance. And not only that, but insurance coverage for those additional screening and surveillance opportunities. So knowledge truly is power, and it is, you have to respect people for where they are, just
Yeah,
as you are doing right now. But
absolutely. And if I could add to that too, Heather, that
sure.
it's actually completely normal for people to feel anxious about,
Hmm.
once they do decide to maybe even get screened and they find out that they do have a hereditary cancer. And for some individuals, this is just hard to just wrap their heads around because they've seen maybe a close family member pass away from cancer or have a cancer diagnosis. So, as you mentioned, knowledge is power. Um, we're just doing our families and those that we love a greater justice by, empowering them to be self advocates for themselves. And then when I say the piece about not being alone, there are genetic counselors and support groups that can further assist people when it comes to the hereditary cancer risk associated with it and how to just talk to loved ones about it.
Mhm. Absolutely. And there's so many different support groups out there for, I'm sure you've been a patient advocate, and if each of you listening has not followed her on LinkedIn yet, you need to do so. She is very active in the community and making sure that patients understand and know. But in your time, you have worked with multiple different advocacy groups that really do really, I guess, support and surround those patients and caregivers with love. So those resources are out there, correct?
Absolutely. And if I could share with you, and probably being biased myself because I
Mhm.
currently I am a board member, but it's FORCE. And
Mhm.
it's an acronym that stands for Facing Our Risk of Cancer Empowered. And that's it, empowered. You're
Mhm.
empowered to take control of your health. And what I found with this group, this organization that I kind of stalked for a number of years, because at the time they were doing a lot of BRCA and ovarian mutation information sources that they were providing. And I just wanted to go to one of their conferences because I felt their information was just so relatable to what I was experiencing as a Lynch syndrome. And they were kind of like, no, not yet. We're not doing that. We're not in that field yet. And then a couple of years ago, I got a call that said, hey, Wenora, we're doing something different. We're going in a different direction. And we're going to be more inclusive and include Lynch syndrome and other mutations. And I was so excited because it meant that I kind of felt like I was coming home. I had a place to go to for information and thus began that journey. And I actually became what they call a peer navigator. And a peer navigator is an individual who is linked with another individual who has maybe the same thing, same mutation as I, a Lynch syndrome diagnosis, and just giving that person an opportunity to talk about their journey, how can they talk to their family, and I think that alone is just so therapeutic to have
Mhm.
someone who has a disease that you can identify with, that it just does a lot for the psyche. And so I started there. And as a research advocate for them, participating in studies about exercise, studies about anything for me at the
Mhm.
time that I felt was important enough that would lend to my survival.
That's wonderful. It's so wonderful and to just feel support, because when you are going through, you receive a cancer diagnosis, that in of itself is challenging enough at times. And all of the precision medicine with genetic and genomic testing, it's wonderful because it does give you a little bit of insight into those additional cancer risks. And that's probably why, as you said, you found cancer that was active and otherwise it would not have been found. Um, but it's so important to just know that you have that support, because it can seem overwhelming. Getting a diagnosis is overwhelming, but then knowing you might have an increased risk of a second or third cancer is also potentially overwhelming. So it's wonderful to have someone such as you to be that support and help navigate um, that patient through that journey. So thank you for doing
Oh,
that.
absolutely. Thank you. Thank you. And it's just a pleasure to do so. It's my way for me because I've had a great healthcare team that I'm just proud to say of. And when I say healthcare team, it includes all my ologists, my cardiologists, my gynecologists, my dermatologists. they've been so great at keeping me whole. And that this is just a small way of me paying it forward and paying it back. And it really does give you a good feeling.
Wonderful. Well, before our last question, I am going to say thank you to our sponsor, Logan Homes, and we have a short video for you to see.
For 35 years, Logan Homes' mission has been to build homes and develop communities where value, location, and lifestyle come together. With a state-of-the-art design studio, you can personalize your home to fit your lifestyle. Explore a wide variety of floor plans ranging in size, style, and price. Whether you're building or buying a move-in ready home, Logan Homes can help you find the ideal community and home to fit your lifestyle. Get started today and explore the Logan difference at loganhomes.com.
Welcome back to this episode of Focusing on You with Wenora Johnson. She's been sharing her journey as a Lynch cancer patient and navigator and support system for others. We're almost done with this episode, but I just wanted to ask one more question, Wenora. Is there anything else that you want to share with individuals listening today, whether they're diagnosed with cancer, whether they're a caregiver, whether they have a mutation, don't have a mutation? I mean, cancer hits home with everyone. So is there anything else, some words of encouragement you really want to share with our listeners today?
Absolutely. And Heather, forgive me if I become a little bit long-winded, but again,
No.
I forewarned you, I'm that passionate patient advocate. And
I love
so
it.
what I want to share with others today is that genetic testing is important because it can help people understand their risk of cancer, help them make medical decisions, take steps to lower their cancer risk or detect cancer early. Now, for people already diagnosed with cancer, genetic testing can help people make medical decisions about how best to treat their cancer. Think about immunotherapy. It's come a long way. And then the other piece of that is clinical trials. Clinical trials are so important because research helps experts to understand more about health and disease and develop new strategies that will improve people's health. By participating in research, people like you and I may hold the key to better health outcomes for all. And the reason that I can say that with a big smile on my face is because last year I myself was accepted into a clinical trial for a vaccine for Lynch syndrome. And for me, the implications of this test, these clinical trials going well, will be huge, significant. And I say not for just me personally, but for my family members who have that 50% chance of being Lynch syndrome positive. If they could just take a vaccine to stave off any of those cancers, then I'm sure they would opt for that. And so, again, this is part of my way of paying it forward. And especially as a person of color, not just, how can I say, talking the talk about telling people that they should be proactive in clinical trials, but walking the walk myself. And so I'm doing that. And I'm happy to say I haven't turned purple or green or lost an arm or a limb. And I'm, again, just excited about what the results for this clinical trial will be. And then I'm a 13-year cancer survivor because of regular health surveillance, self advocacy, coupled with the cutting edge research. I plan to have many more years. I plan to add many more years to survivorship. And if I could share with you what has become probably one of my favorite quotes of the year, I'm a quote person, and it's by James Baldwin. And it states, "Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it's faced." And for me, quotes like this have inspired me not just to survive, but to thrive. And I think at the end of the day, it's a blessing to be able to do so.
Thank you, Wenora, for sharing your story, for your passion, for educating and supporting others. And I love your quotes. It always like hits home and makes me think a little deeper. So thank you for your time today as well. And thank you to each and every one of you that took the time to watch this episode of Focusing on You. We're excited to dig in a little bit more, learn about Lynch syndrome. We'll make sure that there's some additional resources, such as Force, that Wenora discussed in the link to this particular episode. You can find this episode on the Hope Abounds app. You can find it on our website, hopeabounds.org, Facebook, YouTube, and on our Roku channel. So thank you again, and everyone, take this time to empower yourself. Knowledge truly is power. Self-advocacy is essential, and have a blessed day.